Another ISIS massacre in Syria. This is SkyWatchTV for Tuesday, January 19th, 2016. I'm Derek Gilbert. Syria's state news agency Sunday quoted residents in the area as saying the Islamic State killed 280 civilians from a village just north of the city of Deir ez-Zor, apparently for cooperating with the Syrian government. 400 more were abducted and are feared dead, abducted from the city of Deir ez-Zor itself. Deir ez-Zor is a strategically important town located in eastern Syria near the oil fields that the Islamic State has been using to generate revenue. It had about 1.5 million residents in the city before the civil war began about 4 years ago. Currently mostly controlled by the Islamic State, although the Syrian government does hold a couple of neighborhoods and does control the airport just south of the city. Meanwhile, 4 armies representing 4 different groups are gearing up to battle the Islamic State for control of Syria's second largest city, Aleppo. Government troops from Syria and soldiers from Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah were taking up positions Monday to prepare for this battle. It is hoped by the Assad government and its allies in Moscow and Tehran that capturing Aleppo will turn the tide of the war and convince the rebel groups that their insurgency is at an end. Now, to help win the day, Russia is throwing some new cutting-edge weapons systems into the fight, 2 robotic weapons systems, the Platform M and the Argo. Apparently they were recently deployed, and rebels were startled to find themselves coming under heavy fire from these unmanned weapons systems, which are expected to play starring roles in the battle for Aleppo in the days ahead. Now, shifting gears for just a moment, this is an aspect of the quest to develop a truly autonomous artificial intelligence that needs to be addressed here pretty soon. It sort of goes hand in hand with the transhumanist movement. There are some transhumanists who believe we need to enhance our own biological intelligence with a mechanical component in order to become billions or trillions of times more intelligent. But whether that happens or not, there is a day coming soon when an autonomous computer system will control a weapon system like this, and it will make decisions on who to shoot and who to let pass. It's only a matter of time. The United Nations is already beginning to realize the problem caused by these lethal, or the potential problems of these lethal autonomous weapon systems, or laws. They've held a couple of meetings to discuss them. No decisions, of course. The next meeting scheduled for April. Now back to Russia for just a minute. In spite of some hints a few weeks ago that things between Israel and Russia were getting friendlier and that there might even be cooperation between the two countries in developing the big Leviathan natural gas field for Israel in the eastern Mediterranean, Vladimir Putin has gone around Israel and set up a joint war room with King Abdullah of Jordan to coordinate the war effort in southern Syria. Putin has been trying to convince Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to pull the rug out from under Israeli-supported rebel groups in southern Syria, just across the border from the Golan Heights. However, Netanyahu sees those groups as an important buffer against Hezbollah, Iraqi Shiite militia, and possibly Syrian army troops if President Bashar Assad is able to hang on to power in Damascus. Now, it does appear that Israel and Turkey are close to reestablishing formal diplomatic relations. An Israeli newspaper, quoting a newspaper in Turkey, said a formal announcement could come very soon, followed by an exchange of diplomats. The two countries, once friendly, broke off diplomatic relations in 2010 after the incident involving a so-called Freedom Flotilla boat that sailed from Turkey for Gaza, which is blockaded by Israel and Egypt. Israeli troops boarded the MV Mavi Marmara, and in the fight that followed, 9 people were killed. Speaking of Israel, a massive sandstorm hit Israel on Monday, filling the air with dust and particulates. Pregnant women, the elderly, and children were advised to stay indoors. People there told to close their windows until the storm passed. Heavy rain followed last night, so the air should be clearer today. But winds today in Israel, and some areas along the coast and in the mountains, expected to top 50 miles an hour. Now, we've been keeping an eye on the ongoing conflict and the growing conflict between Sunni and Shia Muslims in the Middle East for some time. there are some prophetic implications to what's happening there, although it is, as the Apostle Paul wrote, like seeing into a mirror in a darkened room. Israelis have been watching the conflict around them too for decades, and maybe even more closely now that word is coming out about another prophecy contained in Jewish writings that seems to indicate that the time of the Messiah's arrival is very near. With the recent tension between Iran and Saudi Arabia reaching new levels, an 800-year-old messianic prophecy that was contained in a book called the Yalkut Shimoni, a compilation of rabbinic commentaries on the Old Testament, indicates that the current political situation is pointing to the Messiah's arrival. The relevant passage reads, and I quote, "The year that Melech HaMashiach, or Messiah the King, will be revealed, all of the nations of the world will be provoking each other. The king of Persia, Iran, will provoke the king of Arabia, and the king of Arabia will go to Edom, or the West, to take counsel. But the king of Persia will in turn destroy the entire world." Well, obviously we haven't seen that part yet, but there are Orthodox rabbis who are pointing to this now, this 12th century, 13th century prophecy contained in this commentary, as just one more bit of evidence suggesting that the Messiah is returning soon. Now, it'd be returning for us Christians, be arriving for Jewish believers. But bear in mind that, and we'll say again, that we don't give credit to any prophecy that's not contained in the Bible itself. But it is important to know what others believe, because what one believes dictates how one behaves, what one does. Speaking of Saudi Arabia, by the way, apparently the royal family there and some other Persian Gulf nations are buying up American farmland, using our water resources to grow crops rather than figuring out ways to irrigate their own desert nations. The Saudis in particular are buying up farmland in the American Southwest, particularly Arizona and California, areas that have been stricken by drought the last few years. They're growing alfalfa in those states for their dairy herds rather than watering their own desert to grow livestock feed. A Saudi-owned company owns tens of thousands of acres in La Paz County, Arizona. That's the western part of the state, about 130 miles west of Phoenix. And in La Paz County, many parts of the county, there is little or no restriction on groundwater use. Well, dairymen in Arizona aren't very happy with this trend. They see it as exporting water. And it's reported that the water table in some parts of La Paz County, Arizona, has dropped by more than 50 feet in the last 5 years. The Arizona Department of Water Resources has scheduled a meeting on the 30th of this month to meet with residents of La Paz County to hear their complaints. Just a reminder that as important as oil is in today's world, the conflict for water may become even more important in the 21st century. And conflict is growing in Europe as native Germans and Scandinavians are taking security against the perceived threat of Middle Eastern migrants into their own hands. In Finland, a group calling itself the Soldiers of Odin, wearing black leather jackets, patrolling the streets of towns that have accepted Middle Eastern refugees. Soldiers of Odin was founded late last year in a northern town in Finland. That's a popular point of entry for migrants crossing the border from Sweden into Finland. The group accuses Muslim intruders of increasing crime, and they distribute signs in the areas that they patrol saying migrants not welcome. The Finnish government is concerned that this group has neo-Nazi tendencies and might take it upon itself to take over policing duties. Finland last year accepted more than 30,000 asylum seekers from the Middle East. Now in Germany, the far-right political group called Pegida is gaining supporters as news of the government's cover-up of multiple sexual assaults on New Year's Eve has become known. More than 600 women in several cities across Germany filed complaints with police ranging from sexual assault to theft. The news was slow getting out because the government did not want it disclosed to the public that these Arab and North African men were allegedly responsible for these crimes against women. The government of Angela Merkel allowed about 1.1 million refugees into the country last year, and a poll published just last Friday shows that now 60% of the people in Germany don't think that country can cope with the refugees that they've taken in. There's been a spike in the sale of non-lethal weapons like pepper spray in the last 2 weeks. And last Thursday, an angry politician from the southern German state of Bavaria drove a busload of refugees to the Chancellery building in Berlin to protest. Peter Dreyer drove the bus with 31 Syrians on board 340 miles from the town of Landshut to Berlin, making good on a promise that he made last year when he told Angela Merkel that his town could not accept any more migrants. Now, authorities in Landshut had made arrangements to house the refugees with local authorities in Berlin, but when the bus arrived, there was confusion about what was supposed to be done with them. So Mr. Dreyer eventually put the 31 Syrians up in a local hotel at his own expense. Bavaria is the point of entry for most of the refugees seeking asylum in Germany, and frustration with the Merkel government is especially high in Bavaria. Now, as Christians, we know that we are supposed to be sensitive and responsive to those in need. Foreigners, travelers, people who are seeking asylum from dangerous situations. The problem in Europe is that these refugees, these asylum seekers, have a worldview that is fundamentally different from the ones of the people who live in the countries where they're seeking asylum. I mean, the conflict is not hard to understand. This is a pattern that we've seen over and over again in history. When you force people from diverse backgrounds to live in close quarters with one another, conflict is usually the result. Diversity plus proximity equals violence. Sadly, going forward in Europe, it appears to me that there are three paths three paths open to Europeans. One is to accept fascism, to allow the government to crack down on everybody so that some people can feel safe. Number two is to see civil war, where groups like the Soldiers of Odin do begin taking weapons and taking matters into their own hands. And number three, of course, is mass deportation. None of those options is particularly pleasant. Conflict has been a fact of life in the Middle East for thousands of years, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. And by better, I mean when Jesus returns. Abraham, 4,000 years ago, was promised by Yahweh, God, that his descendants, through Isaac, would inherit the land from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates. That is part of the Abrahamic covenant. It is still valid today. And we discussed the implications of that with New York Times bestselling author Joel Richardson, author of When a Jew Rules the World, tonight on SkyWatchTV. That airs on the Christian Television Network at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's UTC minus 5. 6:30 p.m. Western Time. Of course, that's UTC minus 8. And you'll find it on the Christian Television Network, that's DirecTV, channel 376, Dish Network, channel 267, and the Glory Star Satellite, channel 117. If you don't get satellite TV, never fear, you can watch it at the Christian Television Network's website, ctnonline.com. Just log on and click the link for the live stream. If you miss it, you can watch it later this week on the official SkyWatchTV Roku channel and YouTube channel, and you'll find links for both of those at skywatchtv.com. In the month of January, we look ahead to the rest of 2016, and you can journal your travels through the year. Keep track of the miracles, the things that God is doing in your life with the Miracles Journal, and never lose your place in your daily devotions with this wooden bookmark. Those are our gifts to you for your gift financial support of any amount during the month of January while supplies last. You'll find instructions on how to donate posted at skywatchtv.com. And of course, you can help SkyWatch TV with your index finger. A click on the mouse, the things that we post at Twitter, Facebook, and our official YouTube channel, you can share with your friends just by clicking like or clicking share and spreading the love around the internet. And if you're ever curious about what's rattling around inside here, you'll find it there. My Twitter feed, Facebook page, and my website. And of course, my email address for your comments and questions, dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. Thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.